All right, thank you very much for staying with us. You are watching KTN Sunrise Live, and indeed, from that discussion on gender issues, we're keeping it, with matters of human rights, I believe. Now, KTN aired Prisoner of My Skin recently, just earlier this week, and we're talking about the plight of persons living with albinism, and we want to broaden the discussion now to persons living with disability. And our question of the day to you this morning is the government doing enough to protect persons with disability? Do you think the government is doing enough to protect persons with disability? Engage with us on this discussion. Please do send us your comments via Twitter. That's at KTN Kenya. You can also tweet me at Yvonne Okwara or send us an SMS. That number is 8040. Remember to leave us your name and your location on your SMS, all right? We want to discuss this in greater detail with Honorable Isaac Mwaura, who joins me this morning to talk about that. Karibu sana.
Asante.
It's very good to have you. What were your thoughts when we aired this documentary, finally talking about the plight of a young girl who's been missing for quite some time now?
It was really terrible. I was seated in my house and with some of my relatives, including my mother, and it was just terrible to see the kind of humiliation that this family has had to go through, and seeing this so-called pastor just working scot-free, arrogant, not caring, somebody who suddenly appears to have gotten some money that he never had. And looking at that witch doctor explaining that nonsense, he himself living in abject poverty, but claiming that he's making other people rich, and using some Confucian tactics to use the same money that actually he had gotten from the investigators. I think the idea that boils to the stupidity of it all, using human body parts as currency, really, is the greatest height of absurdity. Because I think just taking advantage of a vulnerable group of people to satisfy capitalistic greed is totally unacceptable. And I think I was quite appalled. Many people are very disheartened by this. It was quite sad. And that is the kind of life that many persons with albinism live in Kenya.
Indeed. This is deeply rooted in, cultural beliefs and practices. What do you think it'll take, to eradicate this? The belief, honestly, and some of us find it hard to believe in the 21st century that we would believe that some of these body parts would provide us with immense wealth, or would make us, invincible, and, would be able to cure diseases that, science has been unable to do. What do you think it'll take to break down these cultural barriers?
I think the coexistence of a very superstitious society vis-a-vis the rule of law. It's like you have two competing systems of governance.
Right.
If you're sick, you go to a modern doctor. But then also if you're sick, you are told to go to a witch doctor, or a herbalist for that matter, who may just have a concoction that is not scientifically proven. And people sometimes rest in the comfort that the unexplored, that perhaps that speculation, perhaps it works, but it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, it's just a question of killing innocent people for no apparent reason, just because they are defenseless. And I think it's a question of ensuring that we have tight laws, not laws that are lenient, not laws that are just soft in terms of the way they are drafted, but also action. It's a question of the administration of justice. And that's why we, as the Albinism Society of Kenya, and all persons with albinism in Kenya, really condemn the inaction by the police. If you look at all the incidences that have been depicted in the documentary, the police do not seem to take action. They are lax, they're lackadaisical. They just think that it's not a matter so serious. And some of them appear to be colluding with the perpetrators, the alleged perpetrators. And it's because they are getting little money here and there. For example, that case of this young boy in Embu, Ken Masharia, when they went to report to the chief demanded for 3,000. When they went to the police were asking that the car be fueled, surely. Well, where is Utumishi Kwawote in this issue? And we have yet to hear a public pronouncement against these murders by the senior members of the executive, for example, and even the Inspector General. So today, we are going to have a peaceful demonstration along Harambee Avenue.
Okay.
And we are calling people to come out in large numbers to condemn this inaction, because there are laws that can be used. But for my case, as a member of parliament, and I think it's very important, when I sit in parliament, I'm more than ever convinced the reason as to why we should never ever have lack of representation of persons with disabilities in general, because it's a clear gap. When we are able to speak on the floor of the House, when we are able to interrogate motions and mention aspects that affect persons with disabilities, when we are able to ensure that then we can put in motion bills that would help enlighten the society, I think that is a way to go, and there's a lot to be done, but I think we are up to the challenge. But we also need to work together, because most of the problems are emanating from the fact that people are ignorant. People do not know exactly what exactly it is to be a person with albinism and how it occurs.
Right.
I get very ignorant questions, even from among members of parliament. If people would remember, like Honorable Thika Linturi, when I walked into the House,
yes,
and he was saying that he's seen a cowboy working in the House. He was genuinely ignorant. He was not trying to be insolent. And then you hear that, and somebody will ask you, Mheshimiwa, are your parents also persons with albinism? Because they don't know. So we need to do a lot of awareness, not just to the general public, but also to the leaders in this country, if only to be sensitive, and so that then we can factor in these considerations, even, for example, in the budget process and the general policy making agenda.
Do you think, obviously, then now we are on making history this time around with the 11th Parliament, having representation of persons with disability, of various kinds who are now in Parliament, in the 11th Parliament. Do you think we will now see a significant difference even in the attitude of the police towards certain issues surrounding, cases against persons with any form of disability? For example, in the paper today, we're talking about the fact that rapists are now targeting women who are mentally challenged and cannot defend themselves. Do you think we will now see a difference in the terms of, in the way we make policy, with persons with disability now having representation in Parliament?
Even there's nothing as good as having a voice, and people who are able to speak and go to places where others may not be able to go. So yes, indeed, we have been able to form a disability caucus. It's called Kenya Disability Parliamentary Caucus, of which I'm the convener, which brings members of the Senate and National Assembly together. And we are 12 of us, and one member who also happens to be a parent of a kid with disability. Okay. And we held our inaugural retreat 2 weeks ago, which also was attended by the Deputy President and the Speaker of the Senate and the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. And we intend to develop this caucus, a strategic plan, where we are going to prioritize laws that are going to be critical to the emancipation of persons with disabilities from these shackles of poverty and depravity. And one of the things that we want to do as a matter of urgency is to actually amend the Persons with Disabilities Act 2003, because we need to increase the various provisions there, because the ones that are there are not properly they are not properly drafted. They are in soft law, and so therefore they are not necessarily enacted. They are just, it's like they are moralized. It's a morality kind of a document. We don't want things in soft law. We want in hard law, where we know that this is a spade. It's not something in between. And we hope that then this going forward, we will be able to legislate. I think, yes, we would want to see that determination. But I would also want to say that Rome was not built in one day. That's right. So we need to prioritize, because the concerns are quite a number. And then we as members of parliament, we need to see which approaches we are going to use. Are we going to be asking government to bring to bring bills to the House? Do we want to bring private members' bills, for example? But most importantly, are those laws going to be implemented? Because sometimes it's not because there are no policies or laws, but the very implementation. So then we shall also be monitoring, and that's also the role of Parliament, oversight, to ensure that the executive is implementing these same laws, and those whose powers are also include the delegated legislation process must also account to Parliament and give annual reports as is required by the various acts of Parliament that establish them. For example, the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, the National Gender and Equality Commission. That's right. Such bodies, we would want to see them in the forefront to ensure that when they are expediting their mandate, they very expressly provide that then issues of disability get a high profile.
Okay. Yeah. Like you said, there's so much to be able to do. What are some of the things that you hope to make a priority in terms of legislation, and perhaps something that we can see by the end of the 5-year term of the 11th Parliament? What do you hope to have achieved? Of course, there's so much that I'm sure you need to tackle, but what do you think should be the outcomes of the 11th Parliament when we go to our next general election? What will we say your presence in Parliament will have achieved?
Well, a myriad of issues. I'm still marveling whether we need a persons with albinism bill. I honestly think so. But also we have an approach in the disability sector where we work collectively, all disabilities together. I don't know whether it is practical to have all issues addressed by one legislation. Okay. Because sometimes I think we may need to just ensure that we have one institution like the National Council for Persons with Disabilities implementing, but then you can have various laws that give the council more powers. So that is something I'm mulling about. I think I'll come up with a solution. But definitely we need to amend the Disability Act. That is our #1 priority. Okay. I think we also need to bring in a bill of learners with disabilities because of the education issue. And I see it's already in the schedule of the CIC because we started that, some of us when we were still in civil society full-time. And also we need to ensure, for example, learners with severe disabilities. Already now we have a cash transfer program that gives them some monthly stipend, but those who are poor. But then there is also a gap in terms of assistive devices and more so services, because those who require personal assistance, personal aids, they have to shoulder that cost. And also teachers, especially those who have who are in special units, for people, for the mentally disabled, for people with developmental disabilities, deaf-blind, autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, they require people to help them, not just teachers. And so teacher aids are also critical. So that is one of the areas that I'm quite passionate about. And I hope then, either through an allocation or through legislation, we are going to provide for that, so that at least we ease the burden of families and institutions in terms of taking care and empowering persons with severe disabilities. Okay.
We get back to, just as we conclude our discussion, because we know we need to let you go, Mheshimiwa. Let's talk about the fate of Joyce Mzungu, who we highlighted in Prisoner of My Skin, been missing for such a long time. And like you mentioned, even amongst the police, there seems to be some sort of laxity in following up on the matter. What is it like for her family to go through this trying moment?
The father called me, I think a week ago, and he was traumatized. You could tell he's not in good state. Obviously, it's a pain for anybody to lose their kid and not to know where they went to, but more painful to know the person who keeps on taking you, through various corners, through meanders here and there, and no action is being taken. It's painful to see it on TV that the person who is supposed to be arrested is the one who is coming, surrounded by the police, all of them with guns, trying to confront innocent journalists. I think action must be taken, and that's the reason why today we are having this demonstration, because we must speak on this issue. We cannot continue to see, for example, even Ken Macharia living with his relatives who wanted to traffic him, and they are just laughing there, thinking that nothing can be done, yet he cannot even be able to go to school. I think it's absolutely unacceptable. We have had cases, even like in Migori, where two parents actually conspired to sell their own kid, a 4-month baby. And the sentence that they were given is only 4 years. Surely, does it mean that the life of persons with albinism is less? Does it mean that we are less of human? We are less human, and we are less. We are sub-citizens of this country. This idea of people with disabilities in general living as an underclass must stop in the 21st century, because we are no longer people who are looking for sympathy. We are right holders, and the Constitution is very clear. In Chapter 4 of the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya, Article 54, Article 43, they are all very clear on socioeconomic rights and also the rights of persons with disabilities, issues of fair representation and all. But this must be brought to life. We cannot continue to have them as mere statements in a document. Right. And we will not tire to ensure that the full implementation of the Constitution is adhered to. We shall continue to be the voice of the voiceless, and we shall put the government to task. And we are not also asking for tokenism. We are not just asking for actions to mollify, because the situation must be, there must be some intervention. We are looking for long-term solutions that are not only going to help the current generation, but also future generations.
Indeed. We thank you very much for that. And we look forward to seeing, what will happen after, this 5-year term. And, congratulations on getting into Parliament. And we do hope it'll be fruitful.
Thank you.
Asante sana. We thank you for your time. All right. We have been speaking to Honorable Isaac Mwaura, talking about the plight facing persons with disability, facing persons with albinism as well, and talking about that protest march. It's a peaceful protest march that's taking place within the CBD today to push for some of these things to be put through, and promising us implementation of this, that they are first-class citizens as we are ourselves. All right. So